Shades of Benga Online presents highlights from the story of Kenya's popular music in the 70-year period between the end of the Second World War and 2016. The series draws its inspiration from the definitive book Shades of Benga by Ketable Music.
Greetings, my name is Lucy Ilado. I'm a music journalist based in Nairobi, Kenya. On the second episode of the Shades of Benga book series, we will be tackling the Congo connection and the social dance halls of Nairobi. On the panel from my left is Professor Larry Gumbe. Welcome once again. Holding a PhD degree from the Ohio State University in the US, he's a professional consulting engineer with the Engineers Board of Kenya after a long career as a professor in the engineering department at the University of Nairobi. He continues his academic work with the Technical University and Kenyatta University. Professor Gumbe has had keen interest in music since his childhood, is a lay music historian. Next, we have Mr. Thabo Osusa, the lead author of the Shades of Benga book. Osusa has been a key part of the Eastern African music industry for close to 40 years as a music producer, songwriter, promoter, and band manager. He's the founding executive director of Ketable Music, a non-for-profit organization established in 2007. Mr. Osusa is the lead author of Shades of Benga, the story of popular music in Kenya 1946 to 2016. He's also one of the 5 music rights champions at the International Music Council and one of the jury members at the All Africa Music Awards. Welcome, Mr. Osusa. And last but not least is Professor Bettina Ngweno. Welcome.
Thank you.
Bettina was born and grew up in Nairobi, Kenya. She now works as an associate professor in African American and African Studies at the University of California, Davis. She's currently writing a book about Nairobi that explores historic and present hopes and dreams of residents for their city in the face of urban planning that does not take them into account. Specifically, she looks at the planned development of old African railway houses estates where her father was born and grew up. She received her PhD in anthropology from Johns Hopkins University and a master's degree also in anthropology from Stanford University. To start us off, perhaps, Bettina, would you give us an overview of the role of music after World War II and what role the dancing hall spaces played in the urbanites?
Thank you very much, Lucy, for that. So after the Second World War, there was a big influence on music, as was said in the first program, coming from soldiers, in particular, who had returned from the war. And they brought with them Western instruments and great training in music. At the same time, the British government around the world was interested in how do you demobilize soldiers? So people have been trained to fight, what do you do with them after a war? And so they instituted in most of housing, residential housing, a system of social halls. And these social halls were supposed to be able to provide leisure as well as sports, in particular boxing, as a sport that demilitarized soldiers could partake in. And one of the most famous of those spaces was Pumwani Social Hall. Still known today for boxing, as well as other ones like Mathura. People across Nairobi were dancing. They were dancing to live music bands. It didn't matter the sort of race of anyone, everybody was dancing, but they weren't dancing in the same places. Nairobi was a segregated city at this time under the colonial government, and so you couldn't go to, if you were African, you couldn't go to the same nightclubs as someone who's European or Asian. So there were separate spaces where everybody was dancing. And the main spaces that Africans had to dance were in the social hall.
The music scene that time really changed with the arrival of 2 Congolese. One, Mwenda Ja Bosco, and they say his cousin, Edward Masengo. Music from World War II was more rumba-ish and slow. But Masengo and Bosco came with a very fast-paced sort of finger-picking guitar style, really changed everything, and it really made the music scene like there was more dance to it. It was, something really like that's what really brought also Kenyan musicians to change their style of play, and that's why we had people like Ben Blastos Obulawayo now coming on in the scene, and even the creation of Omutibo, by George Mugabe. It was greatly influenced by Bosco and Masengo because of the, as I said earlier, the finger picking guitar style. But I just want to go there, jump into something that many Kenyans think that rumba, like as we know it, or rumba Congolese, came from Congo. No. The first influence from Congo was actually by these two gentlemen. Earlier on, when Fundi Konde was doing rumba, when he came from World War II, it was the same time the person we call the father of Congolese music is called Wendo Kolosoi. So Wendo Kolosoi was even 1 year younger than Fundi Konde. Fundi Konde was born in 1924, and Wendo was born in 1925. And Boane was born in 1926.
26, yes.
Yeah, so you see, and they were all doing something around the same time. They were busy, developing their rumba in Congo as we were developing ours here. Because Fundi Konde's first recording was in 1944, which he did in India. And the known recording by, or the most famous recording by Papa Wendo was in 1948. So you see, we were just around the same time, and probably were ahead of them anyway. But these two gentlemen really brought a radical change. This is the Congolese connection.
And they came and only settled in Nairobi? Or
Yeah,
did they move to other parts of the country and the region, that's East Africa?
Actually, they moved around quite a bit. On the morning when I was born, there was a big concert. I was born in Kisumu, played by Edward Masengo. And my mother was very disappointed that she couldn't attend. Because Masengo was playing. And some of the older people still call me Masengo up to now.
Oh, wow. All right, that's cool.
Yeah, so they went around. And there is something else which also spurred the music when they came around. Because the commercial potential of music in terms of selling goods was discovered at this time, especially Edward Masengo. I think Masengo stayed here much longer. And in the early 60s, he was marketing Coca-Cola, marketing something else. If they were not marketing peace because of Mau Mau.
Even soap.
Yeah, they were soap, they mark Aspro, medicine. So it came like that. But then, you see, Edward Masengo and Jean Mwenda Bosco Abayeke had a lot of influence because they were actually here. People accessed them physically. So the rumba music, as Tabu has rightly said, we had our own rumba developing in the coast of Kenya and in the hinterland of Kenya, and it was also developing in Congo. So it is not like we borrowed it. But the influence of these musicians who came here from Eastern Congo was fundamental. Because their language was also accessible to us.
And I think also the advertising was incredibly important. They were used to advertise for the first time on a national level. So until that time, people did not think of the African consumer as somebody of importance.
To wrap up on the two musicians from Congo, when did they leave the country? And after they left, who are some of the musicians that emerged that took up the finger-picking style and, continued with the sound?
There's so many after. I think they were only here for about a year, actually.
Okay.
They didn't really stay in Kenya that long, but their impact was big. But as I said earlier on, that after Mwenda Jean Bosco left, people like Ben Blasters of Bulawayo took it. I mean, like the one who did the song, So Many Vijana. And then I said Mugabe also was greatly influenced. And then that was also like the creation of the BENGA music.
So now let's listen to Nairobi City Ensemble performing So Many Vijana by Ben Blasters Bulawayo.
Tulikuwa vijana, tulicheza na masomo, kazi ya watoto, kweli kila siku ni kucheza. Tulikuwa vijana, tulicheza na masomo, kazi ya watoto, kweli kila siku ni kucheza. Someni vijana, muongeze pia bidii, mwisho wa kusoma mtapata kazi nzuri sana. Someni vijana, muongeze pia bidii. Mwisho wa kusoma mtapata kazi nzuri sana. Waliokosa kusoma wafanye kazi na nguvu. Waambie wao watoto mwisho wa kusoma kweli furaha. Waliokosa kusoma wafanye kazi na nguvu. Waambie watoto mwisho wa kusoma kweli furaha. Someni vijana, muongeze pia bidii. Mwisho wa kusoma mtapata kazi nzuri sana. Someni vijana, muongeze pia bidii. Mwisho wa kusoma mtapata kazi nzuri sana. Siku hizi sikupigana magumi, kalamu na karatasi ndiyo silaha ya siku hizi. Mambo ya siku hizi sikupigana magumi, kalamu na karatasi ndiyo silaha ya siku hizi. Someni vijana, muongeze pia bidii. Mwisho wa kusoma mtapata kazi nzuri sana. Someni vijana, muongeze pia bidii. Mwisho wa kusoma mtapata kazi nzuri sana.
The 1950s is an incredibly important moment for Nairobi. Nairobi trebled in size. It went from 100,000 people to 300,000 people by independence, right? And one of the reasons was an expansion of the railways. But we have to think about 1950s, interestingly, because it was a moment of the emergency. And that meant certain people could not be in Nairobi. And this is mainly the area of Central Province and Mount Kenya area. So there was a limit of those people and a huge decrease in the number of those people and an expansion of the railways and an expansion of the civil service. And as a result of that, you find that there's a great influence of Nairobi in the 1950s from 3 different regions of the country that come in the 1950s. Earlier, they were different, like coastal influences and other things. But those 3 regions are Nyanza, Western, and Ukambani. And that also affected all the music of Nairobi, because for about 10 years, those were the dominant outside influences that then were also borrowing from international sounds, Cuban, Caribbean generally, including calypsos, the twist, and of course, the Congolese sound. And so those were the, and the South African kwela in particular, which is also a version of that twist. That was our version of the twist. Twisty comes from the kwela, the twist through South Africa. And then in 1959, which is a really important other issue of the railways, there was the biggest railway strike ever that was across East Africa. And this strike meant that 1 million people didn't travel in 1 year It was a reduction of 1 million passenger voyages. And this had a huge effect on the railway, and they were trying to appeal to people as good guys when they had this major labor problem, right? And one of the ways they did that was to sponsor music in the form of African Showboat, which was a radio program.
Yeah.
It's also important to say that until that time, radio was in English, Hindi, Arabic, and then vernacular, like Swahili at the coast only, and then vernacular languages. So that's an interesting, odd thing that came up at that time.
Professor Larry, what was the sound of independence during the same period where we had all these other musicians coming in and out of the country and the region?
Well, there's a group which comes to my mind. It was called OS Jazz, which was a part of African Jazz of Kalejev, led by Pascal Onema. Tom Boya brought them to Nairobi. And they played beautiful songs for Kanu, praising Kanu, praising Kenyatta and Boya, and of course Odinga a little, because they were not getting along with Boya. So that was it. And then we had songs played and recorded for Uhuru, about Harambee and so on. There were other songs played at campaign rallies by other musicians, which would not see the light of day. Because, you know, before independence, the people who controlled the space for recording and the space for, and the organization, and our white friends who are leading the musicians, were from a specific, a security background within the British system.
One of the odd sounds that is not actually how you asked was the song Harambee Harambee. And it's odd because it wasn't grassroots in the way we think of it today. It's so much played still, so many years later, right? But it really was an effort to remain relevant by music producers who saw the world is changing, colonialism is over, we need to repackage our mind towards a new audience. So it's funny because it becomes a song that is so ubiquitous. After all these years, it used to play on before the news, before everything, you know, all that. But nevertheless, it was an effort to not lose a market, basically, going forward. So that's an interesting, odd thing that came up at that time.
My take on that, just one word, is the African twist.
Okay.
I was about 10 years old when we were getting our independence. And it all rang in my head was the African twist. It was twist and twist again, and come on, twist. So that's, to me, the sound for independence.
It's interesting the impact that these two Congolese musicians had on the Kenyan music scene, because we can still experience the Congo connection even now. We have many Congolese bands playing around the city, Kisumu, Nairobi, and we also have, you know, huge, popular, famous Congolese musicians that are loved here in the country. So, Tabu, what other impact did the Congolese musicians leave in the country?
What did we take from the Congolese? We took everything. But one thing that I want you to also to know, that we also gave them something back.
Okay.
You see, like in the late 50s or around mid 50s, we had a group that came from World War II, the same formed after World War II, by by Peter Colmo, called the Jambo Boys. The Jambo Boys actually had a female singer called Esther John, and Esther Jones was the sister to Fadhili William. And Esther John was married to some young man then known as Ben Nicholas, or Ben, he was a saxophonist. And then when Jambo Boys broke up, Ben Nicholas with, I think, Joseph Chuza, I think it was a Ugandan, half Congolese, they moved to Congo. They went to Kinshasa. And the band was now called City 5. They are the people actually who now started doing proper jazz. I mean, in Kinshasa, they used to play in a club, I think it was called Afro Mugambo. So we gave them something too. We didn't just take from Congolese. We took from their finger-picking guitar style and all the Kiswahilis. That's why we had the Isaiah Mwinamo, the Kabakas, and the rest. But we also gave them a bit of our jazz in return.
Thank you so much. Again, it's been a great honor. Thank you for sharing your stories and experiences and, of course, your intellectual work as well. To play us out, we're going to listen to the Nairobi City Ensemble. They will perform the song Masanga by Jean Bosco Mwenda. I've been your host, Lucy Ilado.
Kupitia ile njia ya Mungu, uende umwambie Baba Bosco abariki, umwambie ende akalale kwao. Naenda ile njia yetu jado vile, kupitia ile njia ya Mungu, uende umwambie Baba Bosco abariki, umwambie ende akalale kwao. Mwanamke asipo naye bwana tumba, ni kama kinga isipo na lambi tumba, uende umwambie Baba Bosco abariki, umwambie ende akalale kwao. Mwanamke asipo naye bwana tumba, ni kama kinga isipo na lambi tumba, uende umwambie Baba Bosco abariki, umwambie ende akalale kwao. Mama wakwenda nayo, mama wakwenda naye tumba, uende umwambie Baba Bosco abariki, umwambie ende akalale kwao. Mama wakwenda naye, mama wakwenda naye tumba, tuende umwambie Baba Bosco abariki, umwambie ende akalale kwao. Inumba wetu kasongo wetu, inumba wetu kasongo wetu, inumba wetu Bosco abariki, inumba wetu kasongo wetu, inumba wetu kasongo wetu, inumba wetu Bosco abariki. Mimi navala mabaya, mimi navala digida, mimi navala mabaya, mimi navala zigida, umwambie akalale kwao. Mimi navala mabaya, mimi navala zigida, umwambie akalale kwao, umwambie akalale kwao, umwambie akalale kwao, umwambie akalale kwao.
The journey through Shades of Benga continues. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on our social media platforms for the next episodes. Shades of Benga, the book, is available in all leading bookstores in Kenya. Get your copy for this and other stories in full.
Mambo vipi?